Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, first ranking officer of the Terry McLaurin Stand Club, Graham Marshall, the Alvin Kamara Apology Parade, and BFFs with the Oracle, your humble host, Pete Rogers. And for the first time in forever, everyone's on the show. We have the Duckfather, foreteller of Devontae Parker's breakout, DK Metcalf's number one admirer, and caster of the double reverse chutzpah, resident old man Clark Barnes, Scotty Miller fanboy, Mule Skinner of the Zach Ertz decline wagon, King Lizard of the Alan Lazard hype terrarium, the Coach Whisperer, the Wine Sipperer, the Will Disley, working girl Jordan Smith, and finally the sunken lieutenant of the SS Deshaun Jackson, loather of Adam Gase, doubter of John Gruden's Jacob Handelstick, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, the ginger stubble man, Nick Botiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Ready for a doubleheader of football tonight.
Yeah,
that's going to be fun.
As a Patriots fan, I am not ready for a doubleheader of football tonight with Cam Newton out, Brian Hoyer in against Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Yeah, not looking forward to it. So I'm gonna extend this podcast as long as possible, so I have to watch as little of it as. So hope you guys are in for a 4-hour-long podcast.
Are you concerned about the fact they actually have to go to Arrowhead? I don't think that's a.
No, I
really
don't
think home.
I'm not kidding about that.
Well,
anymore. It's more of the travel. I mean, the fact that they traveled today and are getting in, and then yeah. But Clark, did anything notable happen to you today? Anything? In
yeah, the Texans decided to look for a new head coach and general manager, and I am not going to celebrate a man losing his job, but I will absolutely celebrate a new man or woman getting a new job piloting the Houston Texans. I am very excited.
Oh yeah, cue the music. What an achievement for all those who said Bill O'Brien was going to get fired before Dan Quinn or Adam Gase. Come get your prize.
Yeah. Really surprised. I had just been resigned to the fact that Bill O'Brien was going to get to finish his rebuild, which, if I may remind folks, means the Texans still don't have a first-round pick in this coming up draft. So thanks for that, Bill. Yeah, really great news today at the old Home Depot, shopping for some trim to finish trimming out one of the doors we're putting in. And I got a text from a friend saying Bill O'Brien is not your head coach anymore. I was very excited.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to love the internal decision to be Bill O'Brien, sure, if you want to trade DeAndre Hopkins, that's okay. But if you lose 4 games to start the 2020 season, you're out.
I'm very curious to understand what was the last straw? Was it, so he took back play calling last week. Yeah, go for it, Clark.
So to me, the last straw was the Texans down by 20 points and on 1st and 10 out of shotgun, handing the ball to David Johnson again. I saw that, and I'm glad I was home alone because I don't usually yell about sports. I'm an internalizer. I don't need people. I threw a fit. My dog was so confused about what was happening when I was rewatching that game. So I hope that was the last straw because I saw that. I just could not believe what I was seeing.
I think that would be super cool if I was just talking about this with a buddy of mine. I think it'd be really cool if the reason he was fired was because of play calling and the overall scheme, and not just that he was finally found out to be the Grima Wormtongue that he is. I could see if the latter's the case, then Cornell is just gonna just keep O'Brien's playbook going, and then we're still in the creek with no paddle. But I really am hoping that it was a structural change.
It has to be everything, right? I mean,
you would hope. You'd hope that they would take this as the opportunity to just be clearly things aren't working. Clearly our once incredible quarterback has had a subpar season, partially because we traded away his number one target, but also because this offense is not good. It's not a great structure. And so hopefully this will be a splash to get things going.
So are they going to bring in a new GM or who's going to be running?
Isn't what's his name? Their spiritual guru guy, seizing all power right now.
Because that's the curious part to me is letting go of your head coach / GM in the very early going of a season when I don't know if they have a contingency plan. I feel like you just let them finish out the year, hire somebody new, and then let them kind of install what they need to install over the off season.
I'm just hoping that they didn't want to get the first dibs on Adam Gase after he gets fired. That's like my nightmare right now.
Hey, he coached Peyton Manning.
Yeah. I mean, did you see what he did with Peyton Manning? He'd be great for Deshaun Watson.
Dude, I didn't even think about that.
Oh,
that
God,
would be the worst fucking possible
that would
thing.
be
First thought that popped in my head is don't celebrate yet.
Oh, no. Wow. That just – whew. We should probably move on before we really let that thought just stew in our minds and kind of ruin everything. That being said, the NFL news we got coming for us is not something to be super excited about. As always, once the season begins, NFL news is basically just kind of a rundown of all the players who are injured. And again, we saw two big tight ends. Tight ends? What the fuck am I talking about? Two big running backs go down with injury. Austin Ekeler is out for significant time. I haven't seen an actual timeline for him, but it's a grade 2 hamstring strain, which means, Jordan, Joshua Kelly season is once again upon us.
Yeah, it seems like that's the general progression that's going to happen for the LA Chargers. Is just give the ball to their rookie who seems to be pretty talented. And from the jump, when I saw him in the first game, I had this thought, like, are the Chargers one of those teams that has like a position group where wherever they draft somebody at that position, you're just like, yeah, I want to buy some stock in them. I mean, they've had from LT to Michael Turner to Melvin Gordon to Austin Ekeler, and I don't think Josh Kelly is as good as those guys, but I think with the way the Chargers like to utilize their running backs, that he'll be a pretty good fantasy option in the meantime.
Yeah, and after Ekeler went down, they used Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly, and I was really excited about Justin Jackson last year in limited action. He's coming back from some type of lingering leg injury, and he looks like he was not all the way back. So I feel like Josh Kelly is in for some big workloads, at least for a couple of weeks, unless they just decide to force the ball, force a split between Jackson and Kelly.
I do think that both these guys are worth an ad, because what we've kind of seen from the Chargers is that they would kind of prefer a 1-2 punch. I mean, Herbert, he wants one guy to launch the rock to, which is what was so exciting about Ekeler. I'm not really sure what the receiving profiles of these two backs are, but if one of them is superior in any way, that's the one that I would be trying to add.
I know this doesn't help a ton, and it's not a great statistical analysis, but Kelly looked very comfortable catching the ball.
Kelly does look. He's been pretty successful in that so far this season in a small dosage, but he had one big play against the Chiefs that was the pass play. Yeah, Joshua Kelly. Last time I looked, I'm sure it's probably gone up since then, but last time I looked, 54% rostered in Yahoo leagues, and Justin Jackson is 5% rostered. So if either of those guys are available in your league, definitely go add them. I, as a Austin Ekeler manager who had Joshua Kelly just a mere week ago and then dropped him this week, I'm regretting all of my life choices. So that's where I stand right now. But there is a silver lining, because as we move on, you never want to root for an injury, or you never want to celebrate an injury. I will celebrate a person losing their job more first before getting injured. But Nick Chubb is now out 6 weeks, at least. I think I've seen that around with a MCL injury. He got rolled up on in the Cowboys game, which, painful as it is, or sad as it is, as a Kareem Hunt manager, now I am quite pleased, because Kareem Hunt is going to be launched into a much larger workload. That being said, the Browns still looked to kind of split that workload. Dearness Johnson came in for Nick Chubb when he was injured. He carried the ball 13 times for 95 yards. He's been owned in 1% of Yahoo leagues. So definitely someone to go get and add. And he'll be a very hot button topic, I'm sure, on the waivers this week. Just given the fact that this is a, Kevin Stefanski offense. We know they love to run the football and emphasize that ground game, and they've emphasized those two running backs so successfully to start this season. And with Kareem Hunt likely stepping into a larger role, I'm sure Dearness Johnson will also equally step into a role that will give him fantasy value. And he is 100% in your league, so you should definitely go get him.
Yeah, I really like this. There's always another DJ to be picked up, and Dearness Johnson's definitely he's the next guy. I'm super curious to see how this breaks down. I imagine that Hunt just kind of retains rights to the number 3 pass catcher on the team. And what do you think? Gets like 8 more rushes a game, and then Johnson probably comes in with like at least 10 and maybe as high as 15.
I would just caution enthusiasm here. While the Browns have been using 2 running backs, they were using 2 of maybe the top 20 running backs in the league with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. The Cowboys are not good on defense, and the Browns did basically anything they wanted against this team, and as have other teams rushing against the Cowboys. The next couple of matchups for the Browns are tough. I think that they have the Steelers, and who do they have next week? Stats and information is
Stats and information's on it.
Yeah. Colts. So Colts and Steelers, that's 2 tough matchups. So I think that Johnson's definitely an ad, but I wouldn't spend more than about 10 or 15% of my fab budget. And if I had a really high waiver priority, if that's how my league did it, I'd be really cautious going out to get him. Now, having said that, Hunt has been banged up for the beginning of the season too. And so you are getting a little extra pop of he is the next man up if Hunt goes down. And that's a big slice of an offense there for the Browns running backs.
Yeah, those are super good points. I just think like you said, Hunt's nursing the groin injury. So we just need to monitor that.
Yeah, the Steelers next week will make it especially tough. They got an unexpected break this week, so they'll be coming in fresh. The Colts are no slouches on defense this year, and I still like Dearness Johnson and Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, if you're doing this right, you've already had him rostered, and you're not afraid to play him even when Nick Chubb is still on the field. And I saw earlier today that Wyatt Teller, the Browns guard, is like the highest rated guard over the past 4 years. So the offensive line for the Browns is really what's starting to come together, and is kind of a pretty easy schedule, and good offensive line play is helping them get to 3-1 right now.
Continuing to move on in running back injury news, Sony Michel was placed on IR today with a quad injury, which is a bummer because I was really high on him. He was coming off of a career game against the Raiders, and not only just like one that he put up good numbers, but he also looked the best I've ever seen him play. He looked decisive in his moves. He looked like his knees weren't bothering him. He looked like he never has had breakaway speed, but he looked like he was breaking tackles. He was making people miss. These are the things as a Patriots fan you love to see. But of course, because he's Sony Michel and can't stay on the field for longer than a week, he is on IR, which means that the Patriots have brought Damon Harris off of injured reserve. He is actually, he should be taking the field as we speak amidst Monday Night Football. He's available in 30% of Yahoo leagues. And let's not forget, he had actually won the job in preseason or in training camp, but then was placed on IR with a thumb injury, I believe. So he is likely he's likely coming in, and within the next couple of weeks with Sony Michel out and that backfield still kind of figuring out what it is, especially if Cam Newton's going to miss some time. Damon Harris, a nice player to keep your eyes on. Keep him peeled.
Yeah, I definitely am going to stick with my old Dan Rex Burkhead here. I think that
nothing wrong with Sexy Rexy.
I made my fake team's debut telling everybody to draft him in the 3rd round 2 years ago.
Love it. Never waver.
Well. Yeah. He looked so good last week. He had the workload, and I know James White wasn't there, but I do think that just being the veteran who, he's hot off a good performance, Belichick's going to be interested in keeping him going. I'm sure he will give Harris possibilities or opportunities, but with the quarterback situation so tenuous, you tell me if you're the guy to answer all these questions here, but I'd imagine that he's going to really try to just rely on the guys he knows he can rely on.
Yeah, I think with Brian Hoyer under center, it's going to be force feed Julian Edelman, and it is going to be run the football with their stable of running backs. The one thing that I will take, and we'll see. Obviously, we'll know more after. It's a rush game plan, obviously, that's going on tonight for Kansas City. But I take solace in the fact that Harris won the job outright to start the year, and just injuries was what prevented him from playing a bunch so far. So I'll be curious to see whether or not that confidence is still there. And if we see a lead back, or if what you're saying is we see what we've been seeing, which is like a lot of guys getting a lot of touches, and it's just you pick what week you think your guy's going to go off.
Did Stidham get injured? Why?
No, the thought there, I would assume, is just the fact that Brian Hoyer has been in McDaniel's offense multiple times, that they were like on a short week where this kind of came out of nowhere. We're going to go with the veteran who we know could run a offense that we have at least implemented in the past. And maybe Stidham comes in for week 5, depending on how long Cam's out.
I just wanted to bring that up to victory lap all of the people who were saying the absolutely ridiculous, like Stidham may start over Cam. Stidham's not starting over Brian Hoyer. So let's put that to bed. Hoyer, though, does have a little Ryan Fitzpatrick in him. I had the pleasure of watching him pilot the Texans for a little while. He is not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he is kind of fearless. He will sling it, and tonight against the Chiefs, I think that he's going to have to. He is totally competent. If you're thinking, Brian Hill or Julian Edelman in the flex, I would rather still go with Edelman. So I don't think that the Patriots fantasy-wise take a huge hit, although it is a hit. I think if you're counting on a touchdown from a running back, this is a boost for you with Cam being out. But just Brian Hoyer is no slouch. He's a very good backup quarterback.
You don't think they're going to run the QB power on the goal line with Brian Hoyer?
No, Brian Hoyer is a very small man by NFL standards.
We'll see. That was going to be my point too. Is that as long as Cam Newton, you hope that if he's truly ill, that he comes back, and this doesn't keep him down for long. But as long as Cam Newton is out of the football game, then your running backs, whoever it might be in New England, might have some sort of chance to get a red zone touchdown. But Sony Michel coming after week 3 was the number 2 running back by DVOA, but by fantasy purposes, he was RB42. So he was very efficient, but wasn't getting you the right points that you need. Now that things are different with both Michel and Cam Newton out of the game, you don't know how that's going to evolve. So I'm kind of I'm hesitant on Damian Harris or Rex Burkhead or Corey Dillon, whoever they get to come back and run the pass football.
Let's do it, Corey Dillon. Finally in the news, Christian McCaffrey is hoping for a week 6 return. So just ending with a little good news.
Dude, how good is Mike Davis?
He's been balling.
He has been uber balling. So then honest question here, is Christian McCaffrey that good?
No, obviously. It's very clear at this point.
Christian McCaffrey. Your job.
Clark, it's a joke. Clark, it's a joke.
I don't even enjoy
Average
this
at
being
best.
a joke. I don't even enjoy this being a joke.
No, but it is funny. So just 2 seconds, just kind of circling back to the Chargers running back thing. It's interesting when you just throw the ball to a running back, what happens? Like, they're an NFL player. Surprise, they can catch. And it's so efficient to throw it to them. They're all going to look pretty good doing it. I don't know. Good for Mike Davis. Somebody was joking that he should hold out for a contract, and I absolutely support him in this. Like, milk this for all that you can.
Oh, man. All right, well, there's your news. And before we get into some buy low candidates for your fantasy league, let's quickly knock out. We talked to a couple of guys on the waiver who you should be adding. Who are some other guys that people are interested in? Nick, let's start with you.
Yeah, so hopefully this gets contentious and kind of hurtful. For me, I got to chase after Chase Edmonds. The passing game,
nice.
Thank you. The passing game splits between Kenyon Drake and Edmonds are just stark. I think Drake's at like 4 targets on the season, which is wild because last year, obviously, he was this dual threat back. I was super high on him in the draft process. At this point, Edmonds is already up to 17. And I kind of signaled that something like this might happen breaking down the games last week, just because I thought that he might end up getting some slot receiver time just with how banged up everybody is. But he's kind of just catching passes everywhere. I think he's a really good running back. Perhaps not no Christian McCaffrey, but could he perform like Mike Davis if given the opportunity? I think so. And I think that the workload that he has right now, I mean, if he's going to come close to Drake's touches, but the majority of his are coming through the air, at this point, that's the Cardinals back that I want. I don't have the numbers, the waiver wire numbers off the top of my head, or excuse me, his
like I think he's like 30-ish% roster on Yahoo for 34%.
But yeah, I think he's an awesome speculative ad, and what do you guys see? Do you think that there's any chance that Edmonds just overtakes Drake outright, because he appears to just be either used more or is better in the passing game?
So Edmonds has been getting a lot of the kind of 2-minute drill work. When the Cardinals are moving fast, Edmonds is in there. And I think that those can be tricky situations to tease out of the box score, because defenses are playing back and playing prevent style. But Edmonds is taking advantage of them. Another thing that makes this complicated for me is that, full disclosure here, I was not really big on Kenyon Drake coming into the season, and so that may be shading my opinion here, but Kenyon Drake has not looked good early for the Cardinals offense. So I feel like that job is open for the taking unless there's just some stubborn coaching. I don't think anyone's really looked that great outside of Chase Edmonds doing what he thinks. So I'm curious to see if Benjamin can get on the field and if we can see something from him.
I think the Cardinals have been sputtering the past 2 weeks because they haven't been doing a lot of the things that were doing last year, late in the season with Kenyon Drake. Looking at the efficiency numbers, Chase Edmonds has a minus DVOA and only 14 effective yards out of his actual yards is 43, I think. So he is, to your point, Clark, doing a lot in that space of, having opposing defenses play like a prevent defense. So they're backing up a little bit. So I would kind of argue the other way, that Drake is still being an efficient running back. It's just they're not really doing what they need to be doing with him. And I think that's kind of showing throughout the entire offense with the Cardinals. Like Kyler Murray isn't as prolific as he was the first 2 weeks. And DeAndre Hopkins is really the only guy who's worth rostering on the Cardinals at this point, or at least starting week to week, because he's still getting 10 to 12 targets per game. And who knows, maybe that kind of force feeding mentality is kind of altering the way that they're doing things right now.
Yeah. I we'll be talking about Kenyon Drake later, so I have lots to say on the matter. But I will say I don't disagree with Chase Edmonds. I think you should definitely add him, because he has a role as a pass catcher in this offense, and that role has, what is he currently? He's RB 36 in PPR.
He's available in the league. I was holding on to him until I just had to drop him because of all of what's going on. So that's good to the other 11 people that care about that.
There you go, everyone else in Clark's league. Clark, who are you adding off waivers?
So let's see here. Again, the trip to Home Depot really put me off that game today. So this one's not especially amazing, but we're getting into the bye weeks here, so there's going to be some quarterbacks missing some time. And Herbert for the Chargers is still in that window of they don't have 4 games of film on him. He's been putting up good numbers. So I don't think that he's going to be fantastic for the rest of the year. I think that he's still doing okay because he's got some chutzpah. He does not mind throwing it to covered receivers. And fortunately, those receivers are Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry, who do pretty well going up to get the ball. But for the next couple of games, we can still, I think, really comfortably expect good performances out of him. So to fill in for the buys, or if we start seeing more games being postponed, I think Justin Herbert's a good ad for QB temporarily.
Or if you're like me and play in a super flex league and Cam Newton was one of your quarterbacks, I need someone to
absolutely. If you're in super flex and he's available, you should spend a lot of your fab to try and get him.
Spend very many fab on him. Yeah. Jordan, who you like off waivers?
Okay, I did unmute. One of the waiver ads we already touched on, Joshua Kelly. I can talk a little bit more about him, or I can move to my next one.
Go to your next one.
All right. Well, next one, it's Big Bob Tonyan for the Green Bay Packers. He started off to a slow start in the first game or so, but since then he has 10.5 and 16 points in PPR over the last 2 outings. As of week 3, he's the 3rd ranked tight end by DVOA and 7th by DYAR. Devontae Adams, it kind of remains to be seen if he'll play tonight. He tweeted that he wasn't playing, but then he deleted that tweet, and I don't know. Regardless, they also lost Allen Lazard to an injury for an extended period of time. So definitely looking like more opportunity for a tight end that was in a little bit of a tricky situation with how many tight ends that the Packers like to play, but Tanyan is still playing at least 60% of the snaps in every game, and he's only 7.9% rostered in ESPN leagues. So if you need somebody who's just a spot start at tight end or a flex, we already saw like guys like Kittle go down to injury. So if something like that happens to a top guy again, it's good to have a decent backup who can at least get you double-digit points.
And wasn't Tanyan, didn't he come in to get drafted by the Packers as kind of like supposedly with the tool set to be the like Kyle Juszczyk guy where he that was a different dude? Ignore me.
That's not him, but he did work out with George Kittle this offseason. So you know, how
so he's
much
basically
we
George
love
Kittle.
The workouts, yeah.
So you're adding George Kittle off of waivers. Who says no to that?
So that makes sense because 444's John Paulson has referred to him as Baby Kittle for like throughout training camp. So that everything is falling into place now. This makes sense.
Perfect. The narrative is there.
So that's no fewer than 2 Packers fans who are telling you to go get him.
My guy to go get waivers is I feel like we've seen enough out of T. Higgins and this Bengals offense to trust him for the rest of the year. He had 7 targets, caught 4 of them for 77 yards against the Jags. AJ Green has just been hot pile of garbage. I mean, I hate to see it, but he hasn't been able to do anything. And the fact that the Bengals are just chucking the ball around, let me think. Joe Burrow so far is averaging, the lowest number of attempts Joe Burrow has thrown so far this year is 36, which is absurd. So the Bengals are just going to they love to chuck the ball around. And Higgins being seemingly the number 2 wide receiver next to Tyler Boyd. That's good fantasy value out there. And he's 33% rostered, so go at him.
Yeah, I like this. The Bengals passing game is looking really good with Joe Burrow. I always kind of downplay rookie quarterbacks and how good they're going to be because we really like to anoint folks during draft season and forget this is a really hard game to play. But Burrow, I have to admit, has looked fantastic. He needs to not be throwing the ball so much, but that's not his fault. The long meandering point here is that passing game looks great, except for when they try to throw the ball to AJ Green. And it physically pains me to say this, but AJ Green no longer has it. And so the Bengals would be well served to move on, and T. Higgins would be a great part of that plan.
Yeah, T. Higgins, you kind of just hope is a good football player because just based on his measurables, it wasn't really looking like he was going to be anything too special, but I guess that goes to show you can't really put everything on measurables. But I would argue that T. Higgins is a pretty significant spot start because over the next 2 games, they play the Ravens and Colts, and then they still have 2 more games against the Steelers, which is tough.
That is tough.
Yeah, I've obviously been a huge detractor of Higgins. I think the way that they used him 2 weeks ago was awesome. He had 4 red zone targets, and they obviously paid off. If they continue to use him as sort of like a souped up tight end, I think that's definitely the kind of role that he can succeed in. Not asking him to go be a downfield guy, but just sort of like a big, tall dude in the short to intermediate area. That said, his average targeted air yards is pretty deep. So I don't know. I'm going to be skeptical until I see him just totally succeed in that downfield role. But if they continue to use him intelligently, which coaching might just be the most important thing, regardless, excluding talent and everything else. He might be. So he might be a pretty good ad.
Just to keep you guys updated, Damian Harris leads the Patriots backfield with 3 carries for 9 yards. No one else has seen a carry or touch. So basically go at Damian Harris.
There was a man named Zuber, actually, who got a carry, and I don't know who that is.
Yes, Isaiah Zuber. This is now the 2nd game in a row that he has had a carry and gained positive yards. So
they gained
Isaiah Zuber. Waiver wire priority number 1.
I was going to ask if they met him at the airport or something. Just like, hey, do you want to play football?
Hey, you look like you can run pretty fast. You want to come play football for us? Yeah, that's the current state of the New England Patriots. All right, we're going to get to some buy low candidates, but before we do that, let's take a quick ad break. All right, we are back, and as we are through the first quarter of the season, basically, technically, there's 2 games currently going on, but you'll be listening to this when week 4 is over and completed. 4 games through the season. Now is the time I like this time is to start looking at trades, improving my roster, trying to buy low on some guys who maybe have started the year a little slow, but I have faith in them that they will produce as the season moves along. So we're going to throw out some names, and I'll start us off. I decided to dedicate this buy low candidate to my wife, Rebecca Rogers, who's been very disappointed in DJ Moore and does not like the fact that I recommended she drafted him. So hopefully this will set her at ease. It's been a rough start for Moore, and watching Robbie Anderson take off has not been really great for those who drafted DJ Moore with the expectation that he was going to be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in Carolina. That being said, his stats aren't bad. It's just the fact that he hasn't scored, and that's the biggest blemish. He accounts for almost 50% of the Panthers' team air yards, leads the team in target percentage, and has the highest average distance per target with 12-plus yards, which all goes to show that he is getting targeted down the field, which means that his catch percentage, which is currently pretty low, it's 53%. But if that returns to his career average, which is like 65, so it's almost 10% more balls that he's catching, the yards are there for him to suddenly become what the explosive player we thought he was going to be. He plays the Falcons 2 out of the next 4 weeks, which are perfect get-right games, in the words of Clark Barnes. So now's the time to buy him before he gets those games and before he's able to kind of get right and hopefully see what we were expecting from him in this offense.
I'm definitely a little bit up on the Carolina offense. They're definitely going to have to pass a lot to stay in football games. We know that. But I started Teddy Bridgewater in a league to make up for Cam Newton being out. And I was really enjoying seeing on my phone, I would get a notification from the sleeper app, Teddy Bridgewater made a big play, or Teddy Bridgewater did this. And I was like, it's cool. Teddy Bridgewater is starting to do some things. So maybe if that offense is starting to click, and like you said, 2 games against the Atlanta Falcons, that might be a very good get right situation.
I obviously endorse all of these things. Teddy was a guy said don't leave your draft without. His range of outcomes is remarkable. Where if it's a difficult matchup, it's put him on your bench and don't even think about it. And then if it's a good matchup, he's a quarterback 1, which is outstanding. DJ Moore has weirdly become Robbie Anderson. His as you were talking about, the way they're using him is just a downfield receiver. And it's not a surprise that Robbie Anderson is successful because he looked great in New York,
just with Adam Gase can't help himself.
But I didn't expect him to just suddenly be fantastic. I thought this dude could be a really talented downfield guy, but he's being used all over the place. I think it was something someone was on Twitter today was saying it, half of his yards are after the catch. He's just working it in the short to intermediate area. Anyway, I think the offense as a whole is just a real nice buy if possible.
Clark, who's a guy you're looking to buy low in fantasy right now?
I'm going to change it up and do a 2-for here. The Texans have just changed head coaches, which is very good, I think, for everyone. I think we're going to get the yay, the witch is dead bump a la Wizard of Oz. So the Texans have gotten all of their tough games out of the way, other than 2 matchups against the Colts. So the Texans will take on, in order, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Packers, the Jaguars, the Browns, the Patriots, the Lions, the Colts, the Bears, the Colts, and then the Bengals in your Super Bowl. So I think it's a really great time to make moves for your Texans who have struggled. So Will Fuller was the guy that I was going to talk about. But looking at that schedule, I even think David Johnson and Duke Johnson are worth going to get. Duke Johnson's probably a waiver wire ad. I would much rather have him as the running back instead of David Johnson, who looks like a good auxiliary pass-catching piece. Let's give somebody else a chance to run the ball up the middle. But go out and get your Texans. Will Fuller, he had a pretty good game last week, catching a touchdown, almost catching 2 touchdowns, one of those one feet away from having a monster day. But I think there's brighter things ahead for the Texans now as their schedule gets a little bit easier. So good time to go target them.
I also would add Deshaun Watson to that list. He's the QB 13, and I think people drafted him with the expectation of him being, like a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. But like you said, I mean, the games that they played were Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and then Minnesota, and he did well against Minnesota. But hopefully, with Bill O'Brien not being there anymore, and hopefully an offense that maybe is a little more functioning, shall we say? I like your call, Clark, to just kind of like buy Texans players and hope for a renaissance. Jordan, what you got?
So staying in the AFC South, I'm going to see if I can try to get my hands on Corey Davis for the Titans. He's currently averaging 13.9 PPR points per game, but is only a wide receiver 41. And just given his current rank in DVOA and DYAR, which is 8th and 6th respectively, I think that efficiency could lead to some larger gains down the road. I know the Titans are largely considered a run-first team, but I think once A.J. Brown comes back, Corey Davis could actually benefit from that. Might be able to free him up to do a little bit more things. And the Titans have to play the Colts twice yet. So they have one of the top pass defenses in the leagues, but they do have a bunch of soft scheduled defenses coming up. They play the Texans and Jags 2 additional times, or 1 time each, I should say. And they also play the Bengals. So if you can get Corey Davis in a good spot start flex situation, especially as we hit these heavy string of bye weeks coming up, or if we keep on having repeats of what happened this weekend where we have games that are delayed or postponed where people have to switch their buys, you might have to do some tricky things. And it's always good to have a player like Corey Davis who, can be a good spot starting and get you some good points on any given Sunday. And I don't think it would cost you a whole lot to pick him up.
Yeah, I like Corey Davis a lot. I like the fact that he's kind of finally, things seem to be clicking with him in this Titans offense. And we know that he came in with a ton of draft pedigree. Obviously, they took him, 4th overall? Am I crazy in saying that? He was like a top 5 pick, I thought. Kind of ridiculous. 5th, 6th?
Very
Can't see your hand. All right. But
Yeah, I think it was 5.
5, boom. Anyways, so like the fact that I think things are clicking now, and we've seen with this, like this offense at its best doesn't pass the ball a lot, but it passes the ball extremely effectively. And I do think that there is room for 2 receivers to be able to give you fantasy production. So I like the call of buying Corey Davis. I also think you can buy AJ Brown, pretty low. If it's a manager who is like desperate to get someone who's going to take the field, this is obviously your last chance, but you might be able to swoop in and maybe not like get him on the cheap, but not be able to not have to pay up for what he was going to cost you at the end of last year.
One thing I might need a correction on here. I said wide receiver 41 for Corey Davis, but I could have sworn he was like around 28th last week. So I might have been going off the sleeper rankings where it's just total points. And because he didn't play this week, he doesn't have those additional points.
Let's take a gander. Stats and information is on it. If we go by average.
Well, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah,
he might get lost in the shuffle. People aren't going to be scrolling down that far.
They say, wide receiver 41.
Yeah.
I'll get rid of him.
20.
The team does have a pretty tough matchup this week, which might make it a bit more of a perhaps an even more opportune time to get them, because I believe they're facing off with the Bills this week, which they provide lockdown coverage on the interior or the exterior. So no receiver needy team is going to be like, oh man, I got to go get this perimeter receiver who's going against the Bills this week. And so, yeah, if you were to add him right now, you bench him for a week and then it's all systems go.
30 in half-point PPR by average. Not bad.
Yeah, and Pete, since you mentioned it, I'll just skip the line. A.J. Brown's my target here. I know he was drafted with high hopes, but we're at the point of the season where someone could be staring at 1-3 and losing patience with injured players on their team. So I don't think that Corey Davis is a bad call at all, especially because you should be able to get him for, pretty inexpensively. He was probably a waiver wire ad for someone if he's not still on the waiver wire. But I'd go ahead and make your offer for A.J. Brown, knowing that the Bills are coming up. But after that, like the Texans, pretty cake lineup there for the Titans. And Pete, as you mentioned, they're not throwing the ball for 400 yards a game, but they are doing it well, efficiently when they are doing it. A.J. Brown catching the ball in stride is still going to be extremely dangerous. So kind of last chance to go get him before he bursts back on the scene.
Yes, and I would like to offer a formal apology to Clark because I had that in my notes and somehow I completely ignored it to make my point. And I'm sorry, Clark.
We'll forgive you, Pete.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. A quick check-in on the Patriots backfield, you guys. James White has 1 carry for 2 yards and a catch for 13 yards, as well as a tackle. Damian Harris still 3 carries for 9 yards. So.
A tackle?
Yes. Brian Hoyer threw an interception. Brian Hoyer confirmed not great at football. But
Brian Hoyer spelled that interception too. It wasn't.
Did he really?
One. Yeah.
God damn it!
You'll have to rewind the podcast, but I believe I said he was Fitzpatrick-esque, and I said so quite on purpose.
Yes. Well noted, Clark. Nick, who's the buy low guy for you?
It's Miles Sanders because the Eagles are a fucking dumpster fire.
Nick's boy can't say no.
So what I'm leaning on here, I don't have the snap count numbers for this week, but a lot of this is just usage. So obviously he was out in week 1 and whoever drafted him at the back of the first round or early second was hurting. Week 2, 77% of snaps. Week 3, 78. His touch totals, I'm not going to waste everybody's time reading them off, but they're friggin' high. The dude, sorry, Clark.
Read them.
I mean, it just, what you hear so often is that his usage is not high enough. I mean, the dude, I guess he's getting out snapped by David Johnson, but like his usage is really high. And it's just that this team, I'm becoming more and more convinced that Frank Reich and John DeFilippo were the engines of this, or the brain engines of this offense, and that Doug Peterson is just a total fraud because I don't understand the way that he's running this team right now. Yeah, I'm going there.
Doug.
So anyway, I mean, like, how do you roll Carson Wentz out there with this like these offensive lines? They're like, let's just keep bombing it to Djax or whoever we have running out. Like, alter the scheme. This is crazy. Anyway, that kind of usage though is gonna end up paying off, and the matchups do get a bit easier. I foolishly don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I think they have a tough one coming up, and then I believe it's soft sledding. So anyway, take it away. Tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I love to hear this because as a Miles Sanders manager, I want him to have a bounce back. And you're totally right. And this will be a nice little segue, Nicholas, into my guy. But the usage is there. And that you can't argue against the fact that they're getting the majority of Miles Sanders is getting the majority of the work in a backfield that is like he's getting passing work, he's getting rushing work. And it's just the fact that this offense can't like put together a good drive and can't do anything. And you're hoping that as the season moves along and as things kind of get more, as things kind of gel more and they go up against maybe lesser opponents. I don't know how bad. Let me try to pull up their schedule. I mean, San Francisco, they just had, who else did they play?
They have Baltimore and Pittsburgh coming up next. But then after that, Giants, Dallas, bye. And then again, Giants, Browns, Seahawks, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, Dallas. Like
it's nice.
A lot of blow up spots.
Yeah. No, and I like that. I like that too. Also, Miles Sanders is a perfect candidate for like someone with high draft pedigree who can still perform, but people I'm sure, are panicking with him.
I was going to make the case for Miles Sanders because he's like RB 29 right now, and I need to convince myself that Miles Sanders will do better this season. But I was actually using the Sharp Football stats, and I was looking at the rush blend defenses, and it actually kind of gets tough for the Eagles coming up. That's just run defenses. So they got to start utilizing Miles Sanders in more creative ways in the passing game, which if you're doing full point PPR leagues, that's much better for you anyway. And narratively speaking, I think the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line has been through just a gamut of different things. People retiring, people getting injured, shuffling people from tackle to guard back to tackle. Like, that's just a crew that needs to come together and start to gel. I'm hoping that the more reps they get, that'll start to happen for them, and they can actually be able to move the football a little bit more effectively without having Carson Wentz under duress. Because Carson Wentz, he also needs to start playing a little bit better.
Yeah. And I'll say, like I said, Nick, I'll segue this into my second one, which is Kenyon Drake. And I'm going to talk about Kenyon Drake because the workload is there. He leads the Cardinals backfield in carries by a wide margin, yards, snap percentage, leads the entire team in red zone rush attempts with 8. Kyle Murray is second with 5. He's similar to me, and that is the lack of touchdowns that have really killed him. And I wouldn't say that, like, if you look at the combined numbers between Chase Edmonds and Kenyon Drake, and this is why I feel fine with Kenyon Drake. Like, Kenyon Drake has never seen less than 63% of the snaps, while Chase Edmonds has never seen above 40. So maybe things will drastically change, and maybe we'll see a rebalancing, but Chase Edmonds hasn't been significantly better on the ground as a rusher. It's been through the passing game that he's been really productive. And I don't think that Chase Edmonds has shown so much on the ground that he would then warrant the bulk share of touches. Whereas, Kenyon Drake has had one game where he's averaged under 3.8 yards per carry. And that was this week against Carolina, which isn't great, but he got injured. Other than that, he's seen 16, 20, 18 touches, all of which going for above 60 yards. I just think that it's a matter of the touchdowns, and it's the lack of the passing game that has a lot of people down. All of this to say is I don't think that Kenyon Drake will be the running back that he was drafted as, nor that we saw last year. But I think because you're going to be buying him from a Kenyon Drake manager who's panicking and like wanting to just get anything in return, I think you can get him as like a reliable flex RB2 guy and pay for that, as opposed to what you would have had to pay for him to draft, which is, RB1 top 12 status. So I just think that the regression, if his touchdown regression does come, in a positive way, he's going to see more goal line scoring opportunities to go along with his 18 touches per game that he's averaging, which is, that's reliable production.
Those are really great points. I think that from what the chatter that I've been hearing is that the horizontal air raid has kind of returned, where it's just this dink and dunk offense. And I don't know if that's because Kirk got hurt, although Andy Isabella should be a full-time player, or DeAndre Hopkins' ankle. But perhaps what ends up happening is they revert to like a closer version of their 2019 self, where partway through the season, they just ditched trying to run so many plays and started running the ball a lot and a lot more effectively, spreading the defense out. I don't know, maybe it can be some sort of like Cleveland Junior backfield.
And that's the kind of vibe that I'm feeling. And I think that's both of them would be then productive enough in an offense that's, like the Cardinals, where we've seen it be so explosive, and that's Cliff Kingsbury's whole vibe. Both of them would have legit fantasy value then.
To the point of the horizontal air raid coming back, and last week myself gassing up Andy Isabella as a potential spot start. Isabella had 3 targets, 2 catches, and 2 or 3 yards. 3 yards. So that's not what you want from a guy with that athletic profile, and not what you want from that offense. Kyler Murray's got a great arm. Use it.
All right, Nick, wrap us up.
Yeah, man, let's hit it. So this one's just been giving me fits. I always end up punting on the tight end position in season long, just because my analysis leads me to believe that mid-round picks on tight ends are more trap picks than anything else. So the man that I've been trying to mine in many leagues is the Washington football team's Logan Thomas. So as of right now, just going to taking a look at his snap counts over the last few weeks: 74%, 91%, 85%, and we don't have the numbers in, but for this week, or week 4, that is. But I mean that is like elite snap share. And then just looking at his overall targets, I mean he's got an 18.18 target market share on the team. It's second highest on the team, and that's just general targets. But he's also he's got a 25% red zone target share, second highest on the team behind Terry McLaurin too. Last week, I think we might have talked about it, where Rich Rebar was saying that he had like the lowest amount of catchable balls in the league or across at the position. And, this week he gets like 3 catches for 8 yards or something impossible. And this is one where Dwayne Haskins went over 300 yards. That said, they don't seem to be wanting to go anywhere else. Like they just keep giving him they're giving him the snaps, they're giving him the targets, and they're giving him the targets in the red zone. That kind of a usage profile, I just think is going to start clicking. And if Haskins doesn't if he doesn't start making strides, Rivera's already said the heat is on here. We could see Kyle Allen, which I might actually be like a better short to intermediate area passer than Haskins, or at least might lock on to Logan Thomas a little bit more. So right now I'm staying the course, and I think you could get him either for free or from his frustrated owner for not a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer Steven Sims is going to be out, but those are definitely some good targets to go elsewhere. And Dontrell Inman has been like the wide receiver too, but he's Dontrell Inman. So yeah, Logan Thomas, with those, that red zone target share and the percentage of snaps that he's just on the football field is really great. And that's exactly what you want from a tight end.
All right. Well, finally, before we go, just your final update for the Patriots backfield. James White now has 2 receptions for 13 yards. I don't know what happened to his other rush. I guess they took that away. Damian Harris, 6 carries for 25 yards. And Rex Burke had 3 carries for 20 yards. So there you go. Brian Hoyer, 0.48 points in fantasy. Well done, Brian. You are thriving while the rest of us are dying. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That is how you not only get us, but also your fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. Follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark. Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And Nick at Ginger_Nick without a K. We will be back at you on Thursday to talk Week 5 starts and sits. Until then, peace.